Okay.
There we go. And I put the article in the chat for everyone to follow along. The first one is Amazon Elasticache now supports AWS Graviton-2-based T4G, M6G, R6G instances in Europe and R6GD in Europe, Paris region.
Yeah. So it looks like the Gravitons are everywhere. The way Amazon is pushing these Graviton chips, the deployments are at massive scale pretty much everywhere. I think what I heard was that over 50% of the processors that they're actually deploying in all the different data centers are Graviton processors, split right now between the Graviton 2 and the C7Gs, which are the Graviton 3 processors. But I think the rollout is huge. Most importantly, what they're doing with their managed services is absolutely amazing. They're taking every one of the services that they manage themselves and natively supporting those on Graviton. And most importantly, the pricing for the services that are offered on Graviton is lower than the one that you see on x86. So it's, they're pushing those Graviton chips really, really hard.
And for something like Elasticache, where it's a managed service, was there any reason why you'd even care what the architecture was, as long as it performed the way you wanted it to?
Really, no, because Elasticache doesn't even let you, get into the nitty-gritty details of the system. It's accessed via the API, so you really wouldn't care. You just want a performant Elasticache instance that is cheaper.
I mean, the only thing, maybe if you were working on some weird DEC alpha system with big endian encoding and you were caching binary, I can't really think of a reason why you care about the architecture of this. So if it's cheaper, then yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and this is Elasticache as a managed service, right? I mean, someone who's on Elasticache shouldn't really care. The first thing that they should be doing is turning off just changing the instance type for Elasticache.
So this is a no-brainer. This is cheaper. It's really hard to argue why you wouldn't do this.
Correct. And I think we discussed this on a previous episode. We'll try and find that particular episode. Elasticache is significantly cheaper when you move from x86 to ARM. I think the specific versions are when you move to Elasticache 7.1 or I'm trying to remember all the versions, but I think it was Elasticache 6 is only on x86, but once you go from 6.9 onwards, the migration becomes seamless to ARM, and the performance improvements are really, really big. They are like 60% or more. So you would actually end up spending way less on those instances than you would otherwise. Yeah, it's right there. When Redis version 6.2 and above on Graviton 2 based R6G nodes, they have 5x more capacity.
Wow. Looking at the pricing page and looking at the different cache class instances, right? So we've got the R6G. This is the Ohio region. R6G at that hour.
Pick an R5. Let's pick an R5 2X large.
Yeah. So
which is the 8-core and 52 gigs of RAM. That's 8 cents an hour. 86 cents an hour.
Yeah. And then I guess comparable would be this, the R6G.2X large.
Correct.
Which slightly cheaper, a much better machine.
82, but 60% better performance.
Let's see. Yeah, wow.
So you could probably get away with using a smaller instance, given the performance. You probably don't need that massive an instance.
And here's the R6GDs. Okay, so here's the R6GD.2X large, $1.56 an hour, 10 gigabits.
Yeah, but then you get a significantly greater SSD attached to it.
Well, it's interesting. So this is a very simple announcement in one sense, right? It's just a different instance type, but at the same time, it's very free money you kind of just put on the table by AWS as part of the Graviton adoption. You're right. I think in the future we wouldn't even want to know the architecture if it's a managed service. But I guess at this point it's good to know, and it gives us peace of mind of, okay, what are we running on?
I really wonder if at some point of time all of these managed services would only be available on Graviton. Like, as they move to serverless on all of these services, I guess it'll all be on Graviton, and you wouldn't care about what's running under the hood. So the more stuff that moves to serverless, that conversation kind of doesn't exist anymore. But the way they're rolling out the Graviton, I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling.
It's amazing to think of the physicality of the process of having to produce these. Do we know where they're produced? But I imagine they ship these as completed racks that have the nitro cards, Gravitons all ready to go. Get this to the data center, get them installed, integrate them into the whatever manages the region level, and then have it be ready to be offered. It's pretty incredible. They can roll out all of these things at different regions across the globe.
Correct. And it makes sense for AWS to do this. I think last week we were discussing this with Jeff as well. The fact that on one rack, they're able to pack in 3 of these processors on a single motherboard. So it's 1 Nitro card and 3 64-core processors. That's staggering. It just makes sense to do that for the entire data center.
Yeah,
so we're rolling it out in full steam.
It lowers the power footprint. I'd imagine that as you switch to these, like we talked about yesterday, as you looked at that carbon footprint calculator, it would lower a bit as well, just because these are using so much less power.
That's actually right. The carbon footprint calculator, 60%. So I think there are multiple dimensions to this. One, the power consumption overall is way less, right? So you're going to end up saving or being greener on that front. And I think the numbers were like 40, 45%. Sorry, that was also 60% more green. They have 60% lower power consumption overall. Then the next dimension is, if the performance of these chips is 60% better on a workload like Elasticache, then you have that win as well, which means that you would end up using 60% lesser resources to keep things up and running. So this just has a multiplier effect on so many dimensions. You could end up cutting your energy bills or your contribution to the carbon emissions by 70-80% easily by switching over. So it just makes sense for organizations on so many different fronts. And you save money doing it. Usually for a lot of these exercises where you get such massive wins, the cost associated with these are usually crazy high. In this case, you save money. Usually crazy high. You have lower energy consumption and performance is better. So I don't know who loses.
Yeah,
I guess it's Intel.
Yeah, okay, someone loses, but that's okay. They had a pretty good run, and they'll come back. It's part of the competition, right?
The cycles. Yeah.
I was trying to find the highlight of putting in the. Oh, here we go. I'll put this into the chat now. This is that segment from last week where we were talking about Graviton and AWS's metrics for energy consumption. So that just put that in the chat. And that reminds me, everyone check out our highlights on Twitch, and we also post them on our Twitter feed. So make sure to follow us on @AWSMadeEasy on Twitter. We post highlights from previous episodes. And it's a great way to kind of just get reminded about the things we've talked about. We have some really good segments, and taking them in all at once is a lot. But then when you actually break it down into the highlights, I find those are really helpful. Yeah, we had a really good discussion. And I re-listen to them because there's insights that come up in real time that we don't think about. So I enjoy listening to them after the fact. All right. Well, awesome. So thinking about this, we're trying out a new system here. So our overall grade of this particular article, what do we think about this?
So I think this is a. I'd put this at a 4 out of 5. And the reason why I'm picking 4 out of 5 is I wish they had more data about how seamless it is to migrate over.
Yeah.
And if there were like a, two-step or a single click or a two-click migration that's provided out of the box from your existing Elasticache instance, I think that would be neat. Like just 2 more screenshots over here saying, here's how you do it, would make such a massive difference to adoption. Right now, this just feels like a, like I say most blog posts from AWS look like legalese. This just feels like another, cookie cutter announcement, like a press release.
Yeah.
If this was an announcement blog, yeah, having those 2 steps would be great.
Yeah, I agree. I'd just be able to click and say, well, here's how to transition, or even an example of how to change your CloudFormation template or whatever it is to transition over to the Graviton instance. But then overall, I think this is, overall, it's a win. Obviously, we're big fans of Graviton, but the contents of the post itself, it'd be nice if there was a little bit more information on how to transition.
Yep, completely agree.
All
okay,
right.
And then we have the other rating that we were doing, right?
Yes.
Whether this
does this
simplifies or complicates?
I think this is an obvious simplify.
Yeah, I think this one is pretty straightforward.
There we go.
Wow, we've got new graphics.
Yeah. Our designer, she's working hard behind the scenes to really up our production value. So this is simplified. This simplifies life. We get less power, more bang for your buck. All you really need to do is change an instance type. How do you go wrong? All right. Well, anything else before we transition over to Lambda tiered pricing?
Yeah, let's move on to that.
All right. Here